Alright guys, we're back, and I'm going to try to finish this up. One little thing I want to point out was, I think I mentioned this on the last video, that I had worked on the discriminator can, and was trying to get it so I could be easier to make adjustments on it, because it was the slug was a little watered out or messed up. I ended up having to make a tool instead of a slug, but in any case I had the can out, and when I put the can back in and I was getting ready to make this video, and I was messing with the equipment and trying to hook it up, the darn thing was way out of whack, and which I kind of figured it probably would be, but I couldn't get it adjusted in. Well, when I had put it back in, I had followed the schematic to hook the wires up. Now, these cans are numbered, and they're numbered in here too, with the tube numbers, but the can actually on the bottom of the IF cans and stuff have actual reference numbers on them. Well, it said here, take pin 2 off the can to pin 2 on the tube, pin 1 off the can to pin 1 on the tube. And that's what I did, although it just seemed like it was kind of funny to me, because when I disconnected everything, I kind of left it as close as possible in position, but I thought, well, you know, maybe I moved it a little bit. I wasn't thinking at the time, although it did dawn on me to look back on the pictures I took many years ago when I worked on this radio originally, but I didn't, and that was a mistake. If we look at the pictures, here's pin 1 and here's pin 2. Now it's kind of hard to see, but there's pin 1 of the tube. The wire comes down here to pin 2. There's pin 2, and it comes to pin 1. Schematic says this one, pin 1, should go here, and pin 2 should go here, and that's what I did. Reversed it, and it don't like adjusting very well when it's reversed. So the point of this is you can't always trust a schematic. But that being said, don't ever, not try to do anything without a schematic. The first thing you ever want to do, and the first thing I ever do with the radio before I do anything else other than maybe pull it out of the case so I can get looking at it, is I look at the schematic, compare it to the radio, familiarize myself with the schematic and the radio and everything, and take note of certain stuff like that. And then I'll take my pictures, and from this I will also make a determination on certain pictures I might take real close up to try to get, because I noticed something in the schematic that didn't quite match the radio. So take pictures and also have your schematic before you take anything out of the radio, before you do anything to the radio in any way, shape, or form. Familiarize yourself with the schematic. Compare it to the radio so that you got a good idea where everything's at and how everything's hooked up. Comparison. If you excuse me, if you see anything that doesn't look right when you're taking your pictures, take a couple extra ones of that, so that when you get it all done or taken apart or whatever you're doing, you can make sure that you get things back the way they should be. That way you can not only work with the schematic, but you can work with your pictures. So anyway, that being said, stupid here, made a grave error, and I had to catch it. The first thing we're going to start out with, mainly because I got it hooked up right now, is there was a comment made, wanted to know about adjustments by ear. So we're messing with the AM right now, and as you can hear. Now, as I crank it up, we keep the signal kind of low where you can barely hear it. Interesting. I must have a tube socket or a connection not making good connection. But when you're making adjustments by ear, as soon as I find oh, there's my adjuster. What you do is you're listening to it, and I don't know why it keeps fading in and out. That's almost like a tube. Rather interesting. Fascinating. Huh. Anyway. You hear that? Gets real quiet and gets louder. So that's really what you're doing, is you're listening to the loudest tone. Now I want you to pay attention to the meter as we're listening. As we're listening to things. It's rather interesting. The thing gets loud and quiet. I may have a tube going bad. Now see, the meter goes, yeah, right, keep it on the meter. Meter goes down. Get in there. Goes down as it gets quiet. It comes up when it gets louder. Let's see if I can get a little better shot of that. But anyway, this that's rather interesting. So all you're doing, and it's the same thing as with adjusting with the meter. Real quiet, meter goes way down. There we go. Now I'm gonna have to work on that and figure out what the deal is. Now the last little thing is we're going to hook this one up and compare it. I'll explain a little bit. But the one thing, I probably will not be using this generator as a marker. I did find a crystal to put a marker in. The other thing I found out when I was messing with this one I trust wholeheartedly. Mainly because how it's designed and the circuit design, plus I know it's calibrated real well. This one here, the bands, at one point in time I adjusted, but I don't think I messed with these two guys, so I think this one's actually off just a little bit, because I can't get the center frequency to center up with 10.7, and I think what it is this thing is actually putting out the wrong frequency just a little bit. But in any case, I'll show you what it looks like. If you was going to hook up a regular signal generator as your marker for this, you would simply use a capacitor, and you would hook red lead, or the output lead from here to this lead through that capacitor, and that's all you do, and then just go ahead and hook it up to the radio. But I'm going to set you down, and let's hook this stuff up. In fact, I'll just pause it. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, we got it hooked up. I went ahead and hooked up this generator to this guy. This guy is being a little dirty, but don't know if you can see it or not, but there's the pip. It should be down here. It actually is kind of shoving down there, but it should be a little lower. And I think really when I got this one hooked up and I run its 10.7, it's right on center. So this may need adjusting just a slight bit, but the way we're hooked up is we're feeding in. Of course, we're feeding in just the same way as any other generators, to the same spot, but in this case we're actually going through a capacitor. This lead here comes back and goes to the generator set at 10.7, and we feed it through a capacitor to the generator, the sweep generator. Then I'm just feeding that in there, and of course part of this little noise is just this little lead I got here. And then you just hooked everything up, got the detector probe hooked here the way that it's set in the instructions to pick it up, and that's how you get your little pip. Come on, focus on the screen there. So I hope that answered your questions as far as this thing hooking up. It's not as pretty as this one or even this one, and you know, part of that is just the style generator it is. Where these are post marker, this is pre-marker. We're feeding it in, and it doesn't give you as good a strong signal and as good as a pip, and it also takes away a little bit from the generator signal where these don't. So one other little thing here, let me set this down just real quick. I'm going to ground the VTVM out and take it to volts, and I just want to show you something. If you notice, there's a little mark right here. It says 0, minus, and plus. When you're doing a discriminator coil, or then you set it here. This is the way you can get the S curve. Now when it's feeding in at 10.7 and everything's set right, it'll fall right on 0. If it's off one direction or another, you need to adjust it. If you actually sent in the frequencies that make up the peak, they would fall here and here, a certain distance away, depending on the radio and stuff. And you could actually adjust those peaks by following the meter. That's how you set one of these up to do a meter read on that S curve. Is the fact that you can adjust the zeros so much on these and be able to follow it. So that about wraps this up. Now there is one other little thing that that I have to do to this radio before I'm done with it. Something I forgot to do. And what it is when you go to play this radio and you crank it up, crank the volume up some, it gets a squeal in it, a noise in it. And what it boils down to is, well, let me go ahead and shut the power off on it and get everything disconnected here, and I'll show you. And it'll be a simple fix. It's not a real big problem. One thing I want to show you. If you look right down in here, these are the ground straps that grounds the tuning condenser. Now most radios will have a braided lead coming up, and they'll be soldered. These actually got a copper ribbon, and they're actually welded to both the condenser and to the chassis. Well, when I first got this radio, I had noticed right here is what's the remnants of one of those, and I never thought about it at the time. And after I got the radio done, I noticed it, and I had a whole bunch of other projects going on that I needed to get done, so I just kind of put this off to the side until later. And it wasn't until now that I got reminded about it. This had originally had a tube shield on it. Now this is the discriminator tube and first audio tube. So it's very sensitive, and without that shield, when you start cranking the volume up, then what would happen is it'd pick up some noise, probably from the audio output tube right here, kicking back in here, and then you'd get a feedback and it'd start oscillating on you. Kind of like if you got a mic and an amp and you get the mic too close or crank the mic gain up too high or the amp too high, you get that feedback squeal. So all I gotta do is I'll just take some braid, probably solder wick or something, and get me a shield to fit on here and just solder it on, and we'll call it good, and then I'll fix it. So anyway, I wanted to point that out to you. Not a whole much more I can say about this. They're not difficult to do, but the big thing is, and the most important thing is, really is to have the instructions. For one thing, they're going to tell you step by step what to do and how to make your adjustments. The other thing too is they'll have a chart like this. They'll tell you, which can is which, and where your other adjustments are, and your patterns are, and everything else, and that way, and where your tubes are. That way you know when it sits here and says pin 1 of V4. Well, here's V4, so I find pin 1, and it says just T5 for max. Well, there's T5. So you want your instructions, a complete set. That way you can do your adjustments, and they'll have a bunch of notes about how to hook things up, if it needs some capacitors, resistors, or whatever's necessary. And some of these radios will tell you, especially like AM radios, they have loop antennas on them. They'll tell you when you're adjusting the oscillator and everything, you make up a few loops of an antenna for yourself, for your generator, and then put it like a foot away from the antenna, loop antenna on the radio, and that's how you feed the signal in. So, and they vary, and so really, instructions, you really need these, or they're best to have those. You can kind of fumble through it, but it's better to have those, because when you're doing like AM FM radio, You know, I got a lot of cans here. Now, and if you ever noticed, there's marks on these. This is from back when, originally when I did this radio. I put a little bit of a mark on each top and bottom of the FM cans so that I wouldn't make a mistake and adjust the wrong can. So, anyway, that's about it. That's really all the equipment. And you can do alignment in various different ways, but a decent generator, some means of knowing your frequency when you adjust it, instead of just absolutely guaranteeing, you know, watching this dial. You know, that's why I have a frequency counter. When I make adjustments on this, I tie it into the frequency counter and adjust it. Not so much that I trust or distrust the dial, but you know, some of these places get pretty wide to try to get an exact, you know, like 455. Well, it's kind of hard to know exactly am I right on 455 by looking at this pointer. What's a lot easier to look at a digital readout. So, anyway, that's about it. So I think I'll end this video here now, and unless there's other questions about this, we'll be moving on to the Atwater Kent radio, and that'll probably take a series of videos to get through. So until next time, thank you for watching, thank you for your comments and everything, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.